Hey, I'm Joe, and I'm going to be working on my 1979 Honda CBX motorcycle today. It's a 6-cylinder. They only made them for about 4 years inside of the US. There are a couple things I need to do to it before I try and start it. That includes swapping out all of the bolts, making sure they have correct torque spec all over the engine, and then I need to get the exhaust on when I actually go to start it, because if you don't, there will be flames that are shooting out of the front of the engine, and I don't want that, especially since I just painted it. So enjoy. This is the bolt kit that I purchased. So it's from Alloy Bolts, and these are all Allen head. And then I'll be replacing these around the engine, and it'll give me a nice silver stainless look to match things like the bolts that are holding the valve cover on. Now I'm going to change out the bolts on the alternator cover. So you can see these are the old bolts that I had painted over, and then here's the new Allen head. And I have a couple bolts that are different sizes, so as I pull out these screws, I'll just have to match them up with the correct size. So it looks like I have 2 different sizes. So I put a little anti-seize on this rag, and then I'm just going to spin this around. But I just need to coat the very end of it because the threads are a little longer than the factory. And then I'll slide the washer on. Then I'll screw this back in. Okay, easy enough. Now I'll do this for all of them. Now when you remove the alternator, you're supposed to remove them all at the same time because it is spring-loaded, but as long as I'm only removing one at a time, I should be able to pull them all the way out. Okay, those look great. And I'm going to torque all these down to 8 Newton meters. Okay, those are all done. All right, so I'm finally at a point where it's time to put the exhaust on the motorcycle. So even though this box looks like it's a car seat, it's actually an exhaust that I bought from a guy, I believe, up in Michigan. So it should be pretty much brand new. It is for the ProLink model, so I think the pipes are gonna sit down a little bit lower so they don't hit the luggage bags that are on the side of the bike. So I'll get this out, get it mounted up on the bike, and this is the first time that I'll actually have it mounted. So hopefully everything fits, we'll get it all aligned, and then the engine just needs a little bit of oil and we can try starting it up. So let's get this on. All right, so I think that's everything. So I'm gonna use gloves just so I don't get any fingerprints on the exhaust. If you do get fingerprints on this stainless steel, then once you start up the motorcycle, those fingerprints can become permanent, and that's not a great look. So it does look like these have been run. Yeah, we can tell they've been run. You can see right here. So I want to see if I can clean up these exhaust flanges. So these I took off the existing exhaust. I will reuse these on the new. And this is what one of the exhaust flanges looks like. So I'm going to try using some of this Easy Off, which is an oven cleaner. And I'll let this sit for a little bit and see if I can scrape away a bunch of this corrosion. I've used this before to remove a lot of the carbon buildup that was left over on pistons. So I'll see if it can help clean these up a little bit as well. and then I'll spray the rest of these. All right, let's try cleaning up one of these a little bit. So it does look like it's taken off a bunch of the spots, making it look much cleaner. So Scotch-Brite does work. It does leave a little bit of marking, but I'm not concerned about that. All right, so this is the finished product. So they look much better. So now it's time to mount them. All right, so the exhaust flange is going to mount just like this. So the correct way to orient these is these collars push up against the exhaust pipe here, and then the big lip sits right at the bottom like this. And you just need to make sure that it's seated properly all the way around. Get these all lined up. And then I'll get these started. Then I need to make sure that I can still move the exhaust pipe so that I can get it in the correct position. All right, so let's go 1-2 cylinder number 5. All right, so I'm gonna tighten these up just a little bit. All right, so I got all 3 of those on. I'm gonna see if I can fit this properly. It looks like I'm supposed to fit them either that way or, yeah. This probably should fit like this. And then from the back of the pipes, I'm going to attach this. Unfortunately, my license plate bracket that I installed is in the way. And I didn't even think about that with the exhaust. So I'm gonna have to remove this temporarily. All right, so I got the license plate bracket out of the way. So let's see how these all line up. So something I didn't realize, because I didn't look for any instructions, is it looks like all of these pipes, if I loosen these, can move. And then it looks like you can get the holes to line up. So let's bring this up here. Excellent. So I had tightened down a lot of the bolts in the exhaust, but what I realized was when I was trying to get the exhaust up as high as I could, now when I push the brake down, it contacts the exhaust pipe. So I'm gonna drop this down, make sure I have enough clearance on the brake pedal so that I don't have to worry about that hitting. So I'm gonna loosen this. Gives me enough room. There we go. So I'm no longer contacting it. It may actually, I may be able to adjust this a little bit more, maybe raise the exhaust up just a little bit once I actually bleed the brakes, because I don't think I'll be pushing down all the way, but I think we've got the clearance that we need now. And then I should probably re-torque. And I haven't actually torqued, but I should tighten down the header bolts as well now that I've moved some of these pipes back here. But here's the first look at the 6x6 exhaust pipes. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. And here's a quick look at the exhaust pipes from the back. Yeah, I'm really excited about those. All right, so now it's time to install the exhaust on the left side. All right, so both of these collars are a little bent, so they're not sitting flush, so I'm going to see if I can bend back some of these edges. So something I noticed with the last clamp and these collars is that the collars do not fit properly in here. It looks like collars were mashed down and some of this metal is overhanging so that it doesn't sit flush. So when I try and push this all the way back, there's a little gap up at the top. So what I'm going to try and do is take away some of the material up here, as well as some of the material here, because it does look like this was probably the collar that was with this clamp, but this is sticking out farther than it should, so it probably deformed a little bit. So hopefully grinding it down will help us get this to fit. So after using the Dremel around that piece as well as these collars, both of these now sit flush, and I shouldn't have an issue getting them in. Okay, those are all arranged. Perfect. Make sure everything's out of the way. That is with the exception of the kickstand. Put kickstand down. Let's get this mounted back up. All right, and I think the only challenge here is that the kickstand does contact the exhaust right now. So I will have to extend this mount out a little bit and see if I can create a bracket that will prevent it from hitting. This is exciting. The pipes fit. We'll just have to make a couple adjustments for the kickstand, and I can't wait to see how they sound. So let's look at the kickstand issue real fast. So you can see as the kickstand goes up, you can see it contacts the exhaust pipe, which is not good because this rubber's going to melt. And then you see the stopper, it doesn't even make contact with. This was for the Pro Link, which I think has a longer kickstand because it's set up higher, so it doesn't reach. So what I'm going to try and do is see if I can remove this and fabricate something that will prevent this from hitting the exhaust pipe. So luckily, this mount has a little screw and a nut so that I can remove this. And it looks like it's a pretty big hole, so I could run another nut in there. I do have some pieces from a previous exhaust kit, and I think this may just work. So if I remove this stopper, and then I mount this, say like this, I could remove this stopper, and then the kickstand would actually rest up against the bottom of this. I don't care if the kickstand is up against rubber or not. But I think like this would solve my problem. So let's give that a shot. All right, so let's get this nut removed. Okay, so that came out easily. Now I'll see if I can reuse this. I'll just pull this out and see if I've got some washers that will match up these sizes. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna see if this is gonna work in the short term. So I pulled off the stopper. I put it inside. I know this is not gonna sit, long term in here. I could actually try pushing it through the other side if I wanted to. I don't know, I'll have to see. But this will allow me to mount it here, and it should prevent the kickstand from hitting the exhaust. I'm gonna see if I can get it to fit with a combination of these washers. All right, on the bottom, I'll do a washer, then a lock, washer, and then I will do a nut. And then let's see if I can get this tightened down. See if this is in a good spot. Yep, definitely looks like it is. Let's tighten this down all the way. All right, so this will be my solution in the short term. See, and we got plenty of clearance. So this works great. All right, that's a wrap for tonight. Thanks for watching. If you want to get notifications when I release new videos, feel free to subscribe. Take care.